Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful day. We are running a webinar today based on the legal tech trends that you need to know. This is the third and final webinar in our series. From a survey that we ran of over 1,500 managers at mid-sized law firms, we were really keen to understand the current trends and the emerging technologies that they were using, what they understood around what their competition was using, and how mobile friendly their technology stack was. The full report has lots of additional information, top tips, and things you need to know. So if you would like a copy of it, please email sales@fliplet.com or simply go to www.fliplet.com/reports. But let's crack on. Who do we have today? So you've got myself. I'm going to give you a kind of sneak peek and a look at some of the results from the survey. And then I'm going to introduce PJ. PJ is a consultant and a very experienced IT director who's going to be talking about digital transformation. And then we've got Bob Thorne, who is a senior strategy and IT analyst from Benesch. And he's going to be talking about his experience of working with Fliplet and what they've achieved over the time. So that will be coming up very shortly. But let's dive in. So this is the report. As I say, it's been run over June and July of 2020. And we done it in 3 different sections. There was marketing and business development, there was IT leaders, and there was managing partners. All 3 reports are available on our website now. Some interesting stats that came out of it. So over 65% of IT leaders said that limited budgets were one of the top reasons that hinder investments. But I think in this time, we've just had COVID, I think that is absolutely understandable. But also followed by a lack of resources. Do we see budgets or resources changing in the future? I don't know. I think they're always going to be refined until the IT stops being a cost center and is actually seen as kind of adding to the business. But what was really interesting is over 50% of people said that people were the main issues to the barrier to digital transformation. This means people not getting on board, not joining, not wanting to push the boundaries and do more digital transformation. 43% said it was a lack of time and finances. But the fact that people have said that people within their organization, and by that I mean leadership, they haven't been supportive of digital transformation, and that has led to a slowdown in that process. The main technology challenges that IT leaders stated, the first one was integration. I think this is across the board. I think integration always becomes an issue. There's silos of different technologies. So making sure that whatever technology you buy does integrate with everything else is important. Resource, absolutely, it is scarce. So is there an opportunity to outsource a lot of the information, a lot of the requests for solutions could be outsourced to other parts of the business? And lastly was their tech stack. Maybe it wasn't as up to date. Maybe they didn't have all of the pieces of technology that they were looking for. So then we asked, well, what are they going to be investing in over the next 6 to 12 months? And 30% said the top answer there was 30% said online chat, which is interesting. After that, it was web apps and various tools. And thirdly was mobile apps. So it looks like we're going to have an interesting 6 to 12 months. Now, apps are obviously what Fliplet do. We're a prefab app builder, more on that later on. But just an interesting stat here that 3 years ago, there was around 178 billion apps in the App Store. That's predicted that in 2 years' time, there's going to be around 260 billion, a massive increase over that time. Since that stat has come out, what's even more interesting is that Gartner has predicted that low-code app building will account for 65% of all app development. Now that's again a huge amount. That is billions and billions of apps being produced on low-code platforms, and that 66% of big companies are going to be using a minimum of 4. So again, very interesting stats, and be interesting to know, from some of the people on the call today what they're using. Now, this also kind of supports all of that research and statistics that I just read out. That these 3 super large enterprises have recently either launched, updated, or bought a no-code app platform. Power Apps has been around for a while. Google back in January bought AppSheet, and Amazon launched Honeycomb just this month. So lots going on. This is giving you a very clear insight into what is the future of app development. So who are we? How do we differ? We are a prefab app builder. It means that we have lots of pre-built components for the non-technical people within your organization who are able to simply drag and drop the components that they need into a screen, but it's also open source. It means that the more technical people can get in and you can build very, very sophisticated and secure apps. We currently work with around 50 other law firms, as well as the likes of Deloitte and Accenture. So we're very much an enterprise platform. More on that later on. But right, let's jump straight in, and let me hand over to PJ. PJ.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit. I'm going to be talking about technology trends in legal, how to build a business case, and how low-code can really help you make it especially compelling. Before we get into that, figure I'll qualify myself. So I spent over 11 years as a director of IT at a law firm. During my tenure, they scaled from about 70 people to over 170 people. And I had to run a pretty lean IT budget. I had about 2% of gross revenue to play with in terms of IT operations. After that, I went to a software company that actually does CRM software for predominantly legal. I was in charge of the client experience, including everything from support to new product implementations to upgrades of existing products. We had about 200 or so clients, and most of those were law firms that ranged in size from between 50 to 500 lawyers and even larger. Most of them were based out of North America, but international presence. And as a consultant, I've been able to parlay this experience to help my clients align processes and technologies to enable things like efficiency and productivity, and right now in particular, profitability and sustainability. So let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that are currently in the market. And none of these are going to come as a surprise. And they're also, it's fair to say that they're continuing to push forward even in the current global pandemic that's happening. If anything, there is a heightened sense of importance around the first few in particular. So cloud offerings are continuing to get more robust, and almost everybody on this call probably has some sort of cloud footprint at this point. The last few months in particular have really exposed to law firms how well they've adopted some of these solutions and helped them consider reevaluating their path. The next big item is going to be workflow optimization and automation, which again is nothing new, but the last few months have helped firms take a closer look at these as well. The workforce has become way more dynamic. So are people working from home? Are they in the office? Is it a timeshare? Who even knows? And so these technologies have helped these dynamic workforces better manage the processes around things like documents, check requests, reimbursement requests, mail handling, all this stuff that's very touch intensive in a traditional office environment. The next item on our list is going to be the market that really has an expectation of better integration support all the time, and software vendors get this, and they're continuing to make this easier. They've been working on robust APIs that are really helping to break apart silos and support unified solutions. The next thing is artificial intelligence and machine learning. A bit of a pipe dream some years ago, but it's becoming more within reach all the time. And this is becoming especially approachable as cloud or hosted software providers are incorporating this into their offerings because they have that purchasing power and can extend functionality to their tenants or their users. The last two items in this list are hardly mutually exclusive, but security considerations should continue to be baked into every solution. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how low code is making delivery of a lot of these things a lot easier also. So if the goal is to implement any of these technologies or expand your footprint in any that you may have an existing presence, then in the current market, having a sound business case is going to be more important than ever. And this really starts with a very thorough discovery process. So the first thing is obvious. It's going to be that identification of the opportunity or challenge. However, this is going to require a much more intentional effort right now. So active solicitation of feedback is going to really be what it takes to provide that information. And like the good thing about that is that it's a proactive touch point that can also uncover some great information. This could be something as simple as a quick phone call or an email, or If you want broader reach, it could be a more structured or formal outreach like a survey, for example. You'll also want to get an updated resources and capabilities assessment, and it's probably going to be worth doing because a lot of people have used these last few months and their found bandwidth to learn new things and add to their skill sets. So unless you have a huge team, it's probably best to just connect with them individually. Not only does this help you plan, but your active interest in them individually is going to buy goodwill, and it's also going to give people a chance to showcase their skills with some of your upcoming projects. Performance measurements are next. Does it save time? Does it save money? Could it help make or realize money? And establishing metrics and a baseline is a great place to start with this. It's also another opportunity to get feedback on timeline, as the window of an opportunity may be quicker than a traditional implementation timeline. And we're going to talk in a little bit about how low code can help this out also. Finally, a comprehensive risk assessment is going to help you identify anything that could either disrupt operations overall or derail your initiative. So you want to get a good grasp on areas of exposure, including any new considerations that have happened with this remote workforce. These types of access and security reviews are a good idea, really, independent of any new project. So before we prepare that business case, having an awareness and sensitivity to those constraints is really going to help you tune your messaging. I've listed here the most obvious things, but COVID has really amplified the first few a bit more. So the most important thing to law firm viability right now is going to be that preservation of cash flow. So it's not just about billing the clients, but if you can identify something that could be implemented to improve collections or help with that AR realization, that's absolutely going to get immediate attention right now, and stakeholders will probably give that priority review. Since IT is generally viewed as a cost center, there's additional pressure right now to accomplish a lot with minimal resources. As such, prudent management of those resources is going to go a long way, and this is another area where low code can help as well. When you capture hours, care must be given to obviously minimize that interruption, but operations have changed a lot in the last few months. So assessing that impact is going to be a little bit tricky, and it's probably going to be worth looking at current utilization trends to see how interruption can be avoided. And then the last one is, we all know, legal is generally resistant to change, right? But everything is so shaken up right now that people have become a little desensitized to dramatic change. So now may be that time for a new implementation. And having something like a change management plan is going to help you overcome any other resistance that you may face here. I always like to check in with people that tend to be a little bit more vocal and find out what are the resources that are going to be most helpful. And that's going to do two things, because that's going to help with your preparation, but that's also going to go a long way towards seeding that buy-in to help with the future adoption. So the business case is really where that internal sales cycle is going to culminate, and has a couple of key elements to it. So it should always start with the most obvious, laying out in the simple terms what you want to do, how it's going to contribute towards the business's strategic goals or objectives. And moving through this cycle, if your business case is telling a story, then managing up communicates the value of that change within the context of the business. So there's going to be a great chance to really show how the project will align with either strategic goals or provide some sort of competitive advantage or be like a key differentiator for your firm. The next thing is going to be to connect the dots. So this is where your story becomes a little bit more tactical in explaining that cause and effect relationship between those resources and capabilities. And as you're moving through, you're also going to want to take anything that you can measure and incorporate that into an expectations management element. So this is where you're going to present those KPIs that you did discovery around, what that historical baseline looks like, and how any sort of projection or forecasts are going to take place after implementation of that project. And the timelines are going to be another measurable area, as is something like a risk exposure if you've done like a risk matrix, and that should be raised as well. Final item is going to be implementation, quick outline of an implementation strategy. I think it's important to include this sort of high-level overview of both the implementation and change management strategy. You want to be careful not to paint yourself into a corner with explicit details, but an ordered list of any key milestones or deliverables are going to help the stakeholders understand how they can measure or monitor that progress. And if you utilize a low-code solution, this is probably going to be a much easier section of that business case too. So if you've identified that need and you're preparing to engage in the internal sales cycle that we just talked about, I would encourage you to look at those low-code solutions to help you build that more compelling business case. There's a few key reasons why. So first is going to be that lift-to-reward ratio. So they're going to be much quicker to market than a traditional development cycle, since that framework is already there and you can focus on the things that people see and feel and touch, like content, interaction, and navigation. And since most of that lift is going to be non-technical, you can now ease the burden on your own resources by maybe engaging resources outside of IT. These are commonly referred to as citizen developers. And this could be somebody either in maybe marketing, if branding is important, or any other business unit where they've taken an active interest and can either help or have that available bandwidth or provide some other sort of contribution. And with low code, you're not really sacrificing flexibility either, because you can customize starting from a template that's already going to be aligned with whatever that specific need is that you've identified. And therefore, this is going to mean that much lower cost now too, because you're not really building something from the ground up and still having all that customization potential. The ability to tailor that content for the audience and allow them to manipulate it through either an accessible or intuitive interface is also going to lead to a more successful adoption and higher level of user engagement. And inherently, that sort of adoption and that flexibility is also going to boost the impact of your project and increase the visibility for all the right reasons, of course. Finally, that predefined framework that's already built on security best practices with the ability to integrate into, if you have maybe an existing MDM or some other sort of access control system, that's going to help you mitigate risk. So I want to thank you guys again for letting me share today. I wish you all the best of luck in your projects. And if you get stuck, need some extra help, or just want to talk shop, don't hesitate to reach out to me at that email on your screen. And I'm also happy to take any questions right now.
We've had a question come through. PJ, you spoke about surveys and soliciting feedback. What's your advice on designing effective and also actionable surveys?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. So anytime you have that touch point, you really want to make best use of it. And the more of those you do, the more you tend to dilute the value. So if there's a few things I want to find out, I like to incorporate it all into one survey. But you also want to be sensitive to people's time. So first things first, try to keep it the completion time no more than 3 to 5 minutes. If you're going to poll about what would be helpful, it's also a really good idea to check in on just overall client or service delivery experience, because this may provide you an opportunity to help how you're doing these implementations, how people see or interact with your department. And if you can improve that experience, that nurtures this sort of organic buy-in that's really going to help your projects become even more fast-tracked, because people know you care. So I think that's a good approach to take with surveys.
Brilliant. Thanks, PJ. That was really, really insightful. Let's move straight on. Bob Thorne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks, Mike. Yeah, my name is Bob Thorne. I am with Benesch, based out of Cleveland, Ohio. Been in law at Benesch since 2016. And yeah, really, we found ourselves kind of moving back to basically summer of 2018. We kind of found our IT team, found ourselves really in a tough spot, where, you know, our experience was kind of, you know, we had all of our attorneys were starting to work remotely. You know, not a shocker there, but as they start working remotely, they start discovering a lot of those breakdowns. Like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's on-prem. How do I get to that from this? How do I get there? We also had, a lot of requests that kind of basically that keeping up with the Joneses. So our marketing team would talk to some of their colleagues at other firms and say, oh, look what we're doing for our pipeline solution. Or an attorney would go out to a conference and see this and talk about this. Oh, this looks like a great app. Can we do that? When we were struggling with how would we provide to fulfill some of those requests and suggestions. Data agility, we have all of our data, but how are we going to make sure it stays secure? What are we going to do with it? How are we going to put that into an app and make sure it functions, more importantly, functions in a secure environment? And then even just expensive solutions, we would look at other vendors, sure, oh yeah, we'll provide you an app. By the way, here's a big SOW you got to fill out and the change control that goes with it and the licensing and the cost. It just really seemed very prohibitive. And we were really kind of stuck in where were we going to go? And then really that was the year we went to ILTA and we discovered Fliplet. And it really just, had a lot of features that really kind of jumped out at us. It had the security and connectivity we're after. Those common phrases of APIs, MDM, multi-factor authentication, all those solutions were kind of baked in part of that solution. So that made us really comfortable that this would be a good start. Rapid application development. I mean, that's the templating. So when we saw a lot of the things that came pre-built, those prefab templates, that expressed to us is that we didn't have to sit there and code things from scratch. By my nature, I'm not a coder. So I don't want to spend all the time going through figuring it out, dealing with bugs. I don't want to hire somebody to have to kind of come in and do that. And is that skill going to be transferable and growable? Those rapid application developments and those templates really allow us to produce something very quickly that we can kind of show to the stakeholders and things and start moving forward with. Agility. Sure, Fliplet is core based around apps, which is wonderful. And I think that is still our bread and butter of usage too, but we still have many people who either, some older partners, I don't even know how my phone works. They struggle with even just getting an app. So they're more comfortable in a desktop environment. We have some personnel who just by the sheer nature of how they work, they're more apt to work on a desktop screen than a full app. So the ability for Fliplet to present that content really across any device was huge for us. We weren't boxed in, if you will, into just solely working on an app. We had the web capability too. And then the deployment control. We have a lot of flexibility internally to decide who gets what and where, either pushing an app out to their device, exposing and allowing them access to the web interface. So we had a lot of control over that. So going into it, we really felt that we would be on the right track there. We then obviously pulled the trigger and did what Fliplet had was their kickoff or starter program. And, they definitely, give you a warning ahead of time. Hey guys, this is going to be intense because we want to ensure you get something tangible at the end of that program. And absolutely they did. It was wonderful actually. So I worked with Joe based out of the UK. I'm here in the US, so I would work through, I'd make some tweaks on my end. She'd be working on her ends. It felt like we almost had a round the clock development program. And it was really exciting to come in and see she had made some changes, while I was sleeping and then vice versa. So, we really started off with, okay, Fliplet would provide up to 3 to 5 apps. But once we started going through it, we really felt like our decision is that we want to come to show our team and our stakeholders in the firm, we want to have one really polished and powerful solution. So we really tried to explore what would have the most universal bang for the buck, what would have the most appeal. And really we ultimately settled on our directory. Currently we had, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have numerous offices, we're continuing to grow. We were really losing track of where our personnel were, what skill sets did they have available? How would I reach them? And more importantly, how would I reach them if I was on a mobile device? At the time we were SharePoint on-prem, we didn't have a great solution to get to that. So we really said, boy, there's got to be something there. And when we saw the template that Fliplet offered with even the floor plans, we felt, okay, that's kind of where we go. But one of the challenges we had then is, we had been dealing with a lot of those internal struggles where, people maintained a spreadsheet for who was in what department. We were producing printed phone lists. I mean, when was the last time you had used a phone book? But yet, we were doing a lot of those type of options to say, oh, here's a phone list. We put it by the conference rooms and things. So what we really felt is how do we break down and change some of these behaviors on, if we did go with an app, how would this work? And that's ultimately, we looked at and working with Fliplet to try and figure out how do we use these data integrations, how do we find solutions. What we ultimately created is we had already started a process before we even meeting Fliplet of synchronizing our Active Directory content to a SharePoint list. Having that SharePoint list allowed us the flexibility to then effectively just take that list and schedule a synchronization to Fliplet. So we already had started collecting that data from Active Directory. We were able to then use SharePoint to create some additional columns. For example, we created things like current assistant, languages that they speak. Are they a notary? Yes or no? A lot of those kind of columns and data that didn't already exist elsewhere in, say, Active Directory, they're now stored in our SharePoint list. And that SharePoint list, then we just set to synchronize to Fliplet. That synchronization then populates our app. So on screen here, we can kind of see where I've got a few examples of what that looks like for us. So we have the ability to pull in all of our personnel with a lot of the app type functions you'd expect: sorting, filtering, searching. I can go in and click on anybody's particular card. So, for example, that second screenshot, you see my own, where I have all those details there. And again, much of this data is populated, like I said, already exists in Active Directory, but how do you get to that from a mobile device? Boom, it's synchronized to our SharePoint, which then populates Fliplet. And then we also then have a lot of additional data too. Like, so for example, on my screenshot there, floor, I sit in 24C, 24 Central. That doesn't really exist inside of Active Directory. So it's a custom column we created in SharePoint, which also then maps directly to the app. So we have that flexibility to create those items as needed. Like I mentioned, the piece about the floor plan markers was really pretty powerful. So especially as we go from Office A to Office B, how do I know where somebody sits? Well, it allows me to go in and search and find with a pulsing icon where that person sits. I can search, I can filter all through any of these screens. And again, all that key functionality is there. What we've also found too is as we've started and really got the, I guess I would call core or version 1 of our directory app out there, it was really interesting because we started to have a bit of a snowball effect. It was no longer us, IT, saying, hey guys, we have the solution. We actually started having other people, part of the firm, come to us and say, hey, you know what? I've been trying to maintain this list. Is there a way we can hook that in to the directory app? And the short answer is yes. So that fourth screenshot there is, we have a list, or had a list, of here's all the states and courts our attorneys are admitted to, which is great, but is there a better way to find and connect that data? And what we've done is we've actually basically figured out a way to query based on the personnel listing in the app, as well as just doing a search this way. I want to search for who's admitted to practice in Florida. I can expand out that way. They're not pictured there, but in the Robert Thorne card there, if I was an attorney, I'd scroll down and you can click and see, well, show me the list of all the courts that person's admitted to. So it really is a great cross-referencing of additional data sources that's maintained here. Again, actually this list solely exists inside of our intranet. So I'm not even trying to rekey that data. I'm simply using Fliplet as a way to pass a query to take me into that portion of the SharePoint site that allows me to see that data. So yes, you can store data in the app, but you don't have to. It can exist elsewhere too. So again, that's talking about that APIs, data agility and things. So really we have that singular data location that we can now surface it up any number of devices. It can be an app, it can be the desktop experience. In fact, that is our now intranet directory, if you will. It is adjustable on the fly. A few of those examples. When COVID came up, as I mentioned, we've been tracking notaries. But when COVID arrived, some of our notaries became online versus a physical, meaning they could do a virtual notary experience. Well, how do you know where those people are in the firm? How would we find that? So on the fly, we created that solution to update that query to say, well, it's not just a yes, no, are you a notary, yes or no? You're also now a physical versus online. So really, as your firm and company adapts, the app is flexible enough that we can do all this on our own. And again, we started with the template, we built on that, so we weren't coding from scratch. We already had something tangible right off the bat. And now we're just simply looking and working with various stakeholders on where that data resides, how do we bring it in there? And again, this is now something as soon as somebody starts at the firm, it's installed on their mobile device. Again, it's part and core of our homepage intranet, where it's a personnel directory listed right there, which is the web version of the Fliplet app, and all that stuff comes right on screen. So kind of moving along, as I mentioned, not only have we snowballed within just the directory app itself, we now had people coming to us and say, hey, Bob, I've got this need, I've got this project, I've got this initiative. Is there a way we can take an app and make an app of it? And the answer is yes. So we no sooner really got the directory app out there when our partner retreat was coming up. And our marketing team was like, hey, we're prepared to produce these handouts, but we're going to be perpetually trying to update these handouts as things change and evolve, documents and slide decks get updated. How are we going to do this? And we actually built an app. So again, using one of those prefab apps, they said, let's build this out. We created the calendar, all the key points, the schedule, any of the FAQs, and we produced that app and we put it directly out there to them. So our marketing team was really excited, because otherwise they'd be basically producing handbooks and likely have to trash them because they were all of a sudden there's an update. Here we just changed the back-end documents and it made it much more powerful. The beauty about this is we produced the prefab app, and I kind of let marketing run with it. If there was any core structural changes, I would work with them, but they were the ones responsible for updating the content, adding the FAQs, updating the calendar events. It wasn't IT doing it. So we were able to empower the stakeholders or the business users to go in, update the apps themselves. It wasn't a constant IT responsibility. We even built our own solution, software catalog. For our IT teams out there, we've been struggling with, either rogue IT, people finding a solution, people going to conference and seeing this, can we do that? We wanted to try and better expose, here's all the software we have for the firm, and provide it for our users. So not only is it an app on day one on their phone, but it's also on our internet as well. But we basically provide that software list of what do we have? And it's not just IT stuff. We've got our what library research tools do we have? What marketing solutions do we have? We put it all in one place to make sure people are even aware of what we have. We want to make sure we get good value out of it. We also want to try and reduce that rogue IT or, oh, I saw a solution, looks great, can we do this? Well, we've already got that. It does 90-some% of it. Let's see if we can make that work. So, and we also try to make it a little more contextual. Not only is it a list, but we also provide some scenarios of like, okay, I'm trying to share files with my client. What options do we have? I don't know the proper name. So we try to handle numerous scenarios. The prospect pipeline, again, another example of we have, when our team goes out and they meet with a potential prospect, potential cross-selling opportunity, we want to empower those people to make sure that they are up to date and understanding, well, what does Benesch do? What are our various practice groups offer? How can we help you cross-sell and do those kind of things? Again, working with our marketing team, we produce the app. Our marketing team now will maintain the back end to say, okay, as things change, we're tweaking our language a little bit, they go ahead and make the change. And as soon as they save that change, it immediately updates to the app that's out there for the wild. So if I'm an attorney, I don't need to worry about, do I have the latest version? How do I get the latest version? Am I worried about speaking on some things out of date? It's maintained and updated. Again, IT built the app. Our marketing team now actually does the day-to-day data library and management kind of pieces of it. And we're even kind of transitioning into more, these are more informational apps, but we're transitioning to more a little bit of not just informational, but now we're interactive, and that's kind of a capacity. So we want to make sure we have the ability to, where are staff at? Are they drowning in work? Do they have some availability? And as we've grown from not only just multiple offices, but now everyone's kind of working from home, how do we keep track of that? So we've had some practice groups that want just a very simple 1 to 5. I just want to get a sense of where my staff is. So effectively, every Monday or every Friday or as often as needed, the personnel have an app and they're supposed to just publish, what's my ranking for the week? They can update as often as they want, and it's secured so they can only see theirs. However, the designated managers can see across the board. So they can kind of see, okay, where's my team at? Where's my department at? Do I need to shift some resources around? It gives a great real-time solution that we didn't currently have a great option for. Again, that may be different based on your needs, but it's certainly something we found value on. And really just kind of wrapping up, is there a flip for Fliplet? The answer is, really it kind of looks, it depends. Do you have MDM solutions? If yes, great. I think it makes sense, but it's by no means required. In fact, again, as I mentioned numerous times with the web application, even if we don't have a way to push an app there, I can create this content, put it in a web UI that is still secured, is still authenticated and verified. You have those capabilities there. Do you have some of these stakeholders and data librarians to run with it? If you're getting requests for data, if you're finding teams are putting out Excel documents and stuff like that, those may be good options to, could we take that content and put it into more of an app format? So again, the idea is if you've got teams that are interested, they're not necessarily always technical, they don't have to be. It's a glorified Excel spreadsheet. It's a clean look on screen. It's not a large learning curve for people to figure out how they work. And then even if you have a lot of silos of data, again, I go back to our directory. We had a list of languages, a list of who's a notary or not, a list of who's got skill sets in this particular thing, who's committed in these courts, all separate data silos for us. If we were able to kind of find a way to bring that together because they all were centered around a singular individual. That's just one example of how you could take this concept and break down those silos and put it into a singular solution. And Fliplet really allows you some of that flexibility to make that happen. So if there's any questions, my contact information should be available. We're happy to kind of make this happen. Are there any questions currently on the call right now, please?
Yes, there is. What are your future plans to update existing or create any new apps?
Sure. Again, the value of Fliplet is with the licensing we have is, really we're unlimited. We're only really capped by our imagination and business needs. So, I'm sure there's ideas out there that other people are struggling or thinking about that I'm not even aware yet. But with the return to office, so we are actually with this directory app, we are looking at maybe not necessarily creating our own return to office app, maybe, but we're looking at taking many of those core features and bringing it in. That's what the other beauty of Fliplet as well is when you have some of these data, the data sources created, you can repurpose those across additional apps. I take the directory data, I've populated a select portion of it in the capacity in the capacity app. So it allows me a lot of those flexibilities. So I'm interested in seeing, again, how we can kind of cross-pollinate apps, how we can take advantage of other functionality. And as we've seen here, which as the templates and prefabs things grow, does that inspire me or the business users or the potential need? Could we take some of those concepts and blend them into our existing apps?
Great, thank you, Bob. Lisa, are there any other questions coming through?
Yes, there's another one. Actually, it could be for both PJ and Bob. Is a question around, Bob mentioned that marketing developed their own app and that they're quite heavily involved in the maintenance. I guess what would you both say is the best way to get business and IT working together?
Sure. So in that scenario, really what our marketing team discovered is they recognized they would have some challenges keeping things up to date. So I think they were open to the concept, and I think they had seen with the power of, they wanted to have an app too, because otherwise they're sending out updated spreadsheets and documents all the time. And the challenge of, do my people have the right version? When do I send an update out? So they were very open to finding a better way. So that already broke down a lot of those barriers and hurdles. So they're very open to technology. They're very open in keeping the right content out there. We just simply had to provide that vehicle to make it happen, and they were very excited to run with it.
So in my experience, I worked with marketing on, hold on, I don't know if you guys can hear me right now. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. So in my experience, I worked on an app hand in hand with marketing. So that's a really relevant question because marketing had two interests in the app. So for starters, they obviously had an interest that it conformed to their branding and that they could incorporate any imagery, styles, anything else like that that would accurately represent the bigger picture. And then the other thing was we had contacts as part of our app, and we wanted to be able to conform to what they call the form style guidelines, so that information around those contacts was being presented in a way that would have been found in the CRM, and then that way we could prevent like some sort of disparity in how that data looked. So they were very interested in being involved, and it was a great relationship working with them for at least that particular project that I'm thinking about.
Brilliant, guys. That was really good. Thank you ever so much, and Bob, thanks for being so open with what you've been doing. I think other firms will take a lot of insight into that and knowing what that journey looks like. And I think you've been with us for about, is it 12 months, just over 12 months now?
Yeah, like I said, I think we found you guys that ILTA was a fall, late summer of 2018. I think by the time we pulled the trigger and you know, kind of got everything up and running, I would say beginning of 2019. So yeah,
brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to touch on some of the bits that you've already, both of you have kind of mentioned, and that is what is Fliplet, how does it work, and how does it fit into everything that both PJ and Bob have spoken about. So I'm going to keep this short because lots of our webinars that are available on our site cover a lot of this, but just as a kind of roundup and a summary, it is about that prefab. It is about having the agility and the speed to be able to just take pre-built components. You don't need to build them from scratch. You can take solace in the fact that there's, you know, a number of other firms out there using exactly the same features, just maybe in a different way. It means that the technology is robust enough for you to have confidence in it. Everything that gets produced on Fliplet will work across every device, as we've mentioned. It can go into public app stores. Of course, you need to be aware of their requirements, such as Apple and Android or Google. But like, you can produce apps for that. And as Bob mentioned, they can be deployed internally if you have an enterprise app store as part of your MDM. There's other ways to get that information out there, and all of the applications can have analytics turned on. That is up to you on an individual app by app basis, whether or not you have analytics. And this is a proprietary tool of ours, and it allows you to drill into an individual user if you want to see what an individual user has been doing on your apps. But really, for IT, where does this really sit? It's the benefit of knowing that all of the infrastructure is maintained by us. So all of that, the actual operating system updates that Apple launch every year, you don't need to do any work on that. We will ensure, as a Fliplet company, we ensure that all of your apps work across every single device, no matter what update happens. Your responsibility is really just the layout and then content within the apps, make sure it's relevant, it's up to date, there's a nice user experience. And again, as Bob said, that can very much be done by people outside of IT to maintain them apps. A lot of it is from dynamic information in, as Bob mentioned, kind of spreadsheets that can just pull that information in, or API integrations to really make it easy and automatically update. So it's a lot less work to maintain these ongoing. And of course, we have enterprise-grade security and encryption capabilities, and we can help you set up whatever level, depending on what type of information is being exposed onto the app. It's a very visual studio, as we mentioned. We try to make this that it caters for that citizen developer that PJ mentioned earlier. It's very much, it kind of looks a little bit in my world like building a PowerPoint presentation. You have all the different screens down the left-hand side, and you have the components on the right, and you're just dragging them in and building it screen by screen. It means that MVPs can be produced very, very quickly. But for you IT guys who are more technical and you want to get really under the hood and understand and make it your own, you click a button and all of the code appears. You can get in and you can build on top of it, add your own custom JavaScript or HTML into the apps. If you don't have developers on standby, then we do have a code library. This means that just by understanding the logic that you're looking for, you can go into our library, copy and paste a small snippet of code, paste it in where you need it, and you can get the same result without having to have a full-time developer on hand. Some of the most common features are things like news feeds and surveys and the search and filters and being able to custom find information from data sources or libraries. All of that is pretty standard. It's stuff that no developer really wants to build again and again and again. It's not the cool stuff. It's just stuff that they need as standard. What we're finding more and more firms are now looking into is the more logic-based features. Things like decision trees, being able to very quickly take someone on a journey to find or self-serve on a particular legal subject. Quizzes is growing in popularity, not just internally for training, new associates, summer associates that are coming on board, but also with your clients. If something new changes, and in these COVID times, things seem to change every single week, can you offer that opportunity to test them to actually see how well they know a particular subject and whether you can offer any advice and support. Checklists are especially useful, especially around them. In our example here is tax, but making sure people are completing the right things in the right order. And then calculators, any type of calculation that needs to be done, whether it be as straightforward as a tax calculator or something pulling data from multiple different data sources for maybe arbitration or something like that. All are achievable. One of the most recent app templates that we've launched is the Return to Office app. This app is available now in our studio. So if you haven't signed up and opened up a free account with Fliplet, I would encourage you to do so at fliplet.com. You can also watch a webinar and a demo on this Return to Office app. It's being used currently by around 30 other law firms who are all customizing this for their own specific needs. But it allows you to book office space, to book desk space, to fill out health survey questionnaires, which we understand in the US is a big requirement, and being able to securely store that information for a period of time. And we've advanced the directory, so now you can log in there exactly where you're going to be working from. So when Bob was mentioning kind of who's working where, as people slowly start to come back to the office, we want to be able to see at a glance who's in the office that day and who's working from home, who's on annual leave, so we don't contact the wrong people and waste their time. From an admin standpoint, everything is tracked within that kind of data source. So it clearly shows on one dashboard everything that the senior management would need to know in terms of the office capacity, how many people were booked in, how many people are currently in the office, and gives you that opportunity to track and trace. So should someone fall ill with COVID symptoms, you can very quickly filter the information to see who they could have come in contact with. So that is available in the studio now. You can go in, you can grab that template, you can start to customize it and see exactly how it works, or jump onto the website and look at all of the different solutions that we have available. But for now, let me leave you with some of the more relevant webinars that are coming up in the future. So we've got our new features and product roadmap. We did this in Q2 as well. It makes everyone aware of what we're working on, what are the next features, and if you've got ideas that you want to push forward to us, please do. And also integrations, as it's been brought up by both people, that is kind of key to the success of building out additional apps. So we're looking at how do we support and make it even easier for them integrations to happen with Fliplet. But let me just finish off by saying thank you again for joining us. Thank you to PJ, thank you to Bob, and we'll see you again soon.